And I am really, really thrilled to be here, so thank you so much for the invite. And I have a lot to say, and for those that know me in the audience, I can talk. And I'm hoping actually to get a little more hear from you guys too. But if you don't know me, my name is Carrie Forbes. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. I started my own company in January, but prior to that, I was the CEO of a company called League Data. And League Data was not only cooperatively owned by all of the credit unions in the Atlantic side of Canada, which now is about 32, but it was around 46 when we got started. And in that time, we took care of everything for our credit unions, the core bank systems, the front end, digital banking, cybersecurity, everything. We did it all. So in that role, I saw it all, the whole stack. And today I'm going to talk about 3 things through my experiences, not just at League, but prior in public sector. I feel like I've been doing big, hairy projects my whole life, and I didn't ask for it, but I've been doing them. So I'm really excited to share what I call the 3 key systems of digital transformation. So let's get right into it. The first, so this is it. Now, everyone's like, yeah, I've seen this before. Yeah, you have, but we're going to talk about why. So people, technology, and I call governance. And what I mean by governance, I'm not just talking about a board of directors. I'm talking about the process of making and executing decisions and actually getting them done. So it's really not one or the other. When these come together, that sweet spot is when you get digital transformation. Why does it take so much time? Why is it so hard? Because we do it backwards. So I'm going to focus on what I call, this was the big mission. And I called this mission critical instead of impossible because we did it. But at the time, here we were at League, and I'm going to focus on this particular example. We had 46 credit unions, all owners as well, and I know many of you know what that's like. And we had one core bank system that we were issued our end-of-life notice in January of 2020. And that really, kind of switched our strategy for the next few years. But also we had a very tight timeline. We had less than a 3-year to get everybody converted and onto a new platform. We, of course, are small credit unions. We're nonprofits. We're lean. We've got a limited budget. And 3 months later, this thing called COVID showed up, and we had a pandemic. Through that process, we ended up having to convert everybody to online account opening and lending. And we also ended up with 4 more end-of-life systems. It was a fun year. And then I became the CEO that July. So, this is where we're going to start. And when we started looking at how are we going to do this, and I deliberately have started with people because this is usually the end point for a lot of folks. How many people have been on a project when the people side came in at the end? Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Well, we'll get to that later because guess what? The easy part is the tech. We love to do this. We love to go, okay, let's put our boxes, our architectural map, we'll get Visio, oh, here we go. And then we take this thing called the org chart and we start pasting them together. And somehow that just doesn't seem to work. Well, that's because we're doing it all wrong. So the foundation, and I can't stress this enough, of any transformation, technical, doesn't matter, is people. They are going to be the ones that mess it up. I guarantee it, because people, unlike tech, are unpredictable and they're rebellious. And they're getting more rebellious the more we push tech at them, as much as we want. It's enabling. No, you're adding more stress to my life. The thing that we also don't realize is people don't just work in organizational boxes, they work in networks. So it's not the people that you put on the team that's your problem. It's usually 2 or 3 people around them that weren't included or have a different agenda, or have a different thought, or got left out. There's where our things start to break down. So when we think about a network, networks are large. Networks touch other networks. Think of it in the tech sense. People are just as, if not more, complex. So when we think about who we need to engage, it's got to be more than just the little boxes on the side. We have to think about the widespread stakeholders who might be actually involved at some point or impacted. Because at the end state, we had members, and guess what? They're the ultimate. If they don't buy in, oh boy, we're all in big trouble. So transformation also does this thing to people. Have anybody here been in a project, got really messy or thing, and people that you thought you knew just developed new personalities? Yeah, you're like, where did that come from? And that's because we do change depending on the circumstances we're in. And does anybody sign up to do transformation? No. We rarely, there's only a couple of people that are leading it that are super excited, and everybody else is supposed to follow along. But that's not reality. The reality is we're creating a situation of stress. We're creating changes to people's day-to-day lives. Think about the teller at a particular branch in a high-stress scenario, trying to appease all sorts of challenges, and now I got to learn this new thing. We never think about that person first. And guess who's going to be the success factor of the whole thing when it's implemented? The front line. So those are the types of things that we think about in terms of networks. Who is involved, who is impacted, and how do we get their fingerprints on this? And I'll be touching on that in a little bit. So ultimately, when we think about networks, and I find it's kind of funny, we talk a lot about trust networks in tech and in security, but it's even bigger in people. So are we building actual trust out of the gate, or we'll get to that later? And then what's happening while they're waiting? They're building lots of distrust, especially if you're not communicating well. Because guess what humans do in the absence of information? They make it up. And it usually gets bigger and scarier because our survival part of our brain in the absence of information goes to the worst case scenario, always. It's why when you've got a problem, you think it's the worst thing until you get the details. So think about those things. Are we building trust? Do we know who's involved? And are we taking the pulse of whether that network is actually moving through this project? You're like, yeah, that sounds great. But here's how we did it. So this is some of the action, or how I should say. This is how you can approach it. You can do a people network assessment and look at inclusion. So inclusion, I'm talking big inclusion, not just DEI inclusion. I'm talking about all of who needs to be here on this project, and not all at the same time, but at where they need to be. Where do the networks need to start to integrate together? For example, if I really need to understand how my members are going to respond to this change, who's taking care of that, and who links that to the group that's going to develop? Who's in that development group? Who gets their direction? So doing a little bit of an assessment of that ahead of time can save us a lot of pain when we've got our sleeves up. The other big piece of this is communication, right? So your communication is going to transform, whether you like it or not, because the stress and the change and all of the things we're doing create differences. They create new networks, new people, new pockets. Things need to start moving faster. And so if we're going to apply the same old things we do on day-to-day operation, or even with a little side project to a major initiative, this is where the trust starts to drop. I bet, communication is usually the thing that when people go, what could be better? We could have communicated better. Even in a great success, there's always room for improvement. So understanding that out of the gate helps us think through, how does our communication need to adapt to this project or this initiative or our organization? And we need to do that in concert with the network. Who, why, how frequently? We can't just go with the comms team. Yeah, put something together for this group. We've really got to think it through, right? So that really is about what I call moving from a very transactional way of doing delivery to really truly building relationships. Because if we actually care about the network, and if we care about our communication, we're going to build that trust. And that's challenging, especially in finance world, because sometimes we do operate so quickly that dealing with this relationship stuff just takes up time when I could be getting stuff done. Well, if you don't want to redo all the stuff that you just did, you got to put that time in, because the people are the ones who will also be your champions for change. So that's what you're also doing in this network assessment, is figuring out who will be the right people in the right parts of the network to carry our not just I'm not, like, the thing that really drives me crazy is when you see what I'll call the cheerleader approach to this engagement. So you have the leaders, and I've probably been there. Yes, this is great. And everybody around is like, yeah, we'll do what you want, boss, it's good. But that's not what I need. I need to know clearly from people the honesty of what's going wrong. Because if everybody's just nodding and saying yes, we're missing stuff. That's the importance as well of those champions and building the trust so that they can come to you with a tough message and say, yeah, this has gone sideways and we need to do this. But if we only have people planted, you're going to be the champion, without an understanding of that role or that they have that influence and that trust, it's all veneer. And it's a checkbox rather than an actual activity. So all this really boils down to, when I think about people and I think about how to build trust, people love to see themselves somewhere in the project, their fingerprints on it somewhere. So if we're designing for that, we should be able to find a way for groups and people to see themselves reflected in the design or in the outcome somewhere, and that's what's cool. You know, has anybody here had an experience where you got tapped on the shoulder and then all of a sudden your idea, you start to see it, it changes you. You're like, that's mine. That's really powerful. And when people who don't get that opportunity are left on the sideline, and I've been that, I'm like, I'm not on the cool project. Oh, I don't matter. Oh, and it can feel like you're excluded. Guess what? Human behaviors can take over, and then you get silos. Then you've got, oh, you know, this group and that group. So buy-in and trust are really, really important for people to feel connected. And that means in the dark times and in the tough times, they're more willing to step in and to help solve and get those things done. I'm like, yeah, that sounds all good. But here's what did work. So I call a lot of this, and I know have people heard the term psychological safety? Maybe? Okay. Psychological safety is that feeling you get when Sunday night, you know you're going to work the next day, and you're like, good. I feel good about that. You don't feel sick to your stomach wondering what's coming. Who do I have to hide from? Psychological safety is when you are comfortable enough, especially with your leadership, that you can tell them anything, and you know there's not going to be a negative repercussion. In many times in big digital projects, this is the one that shuts people and teams down instantly, which is I'm trying to tell you something, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I don't want to hear it, just get it done. I don't want you to be so negative, you know? All of those things, when really we need to dive down a little bit more and validate what they're saying. Maybe it's not 100% accurate, but if we don't take the time to work with it, we actually make it an unsafe place for them to contribute. So think about our trusted network. What's going to happen to that? When people are just nodding along, we're not going to get the value or their special talents, which should be coming through. So that means that we built, and what we did is we built a coalition of leadership, but not just from the leader team. And you know those people. They're the ones you rely on in your organization because, oh, that person gets it done. People follow them naturally. They don't even have to have a title. Those are the individuals that are critical, especially in the further parts of the network, to help make us informed, but also to support in that way. So that was really, really important. And we did that, not just within our company, which was very small, but we had every single one of our credit unions with one of those folks, or two or three, in the developing of the product. That, to me, acknowledging people's strengths beyond authority helps move things faster. It takes a bit of culture if it's not your culture, but it might be that key to why things aren't rolling forward. So formal and informal influencers are what's happening in your organization. Whether you know it or not, everybody knows this. You've probably been part of some of the informal groups. Oh, there's these folks, they like to do these things, this is how they operate together, and they have influence on the other employees. That's really, really important to know, because it could go good or bad, depending. And it's important to get, especially the naysayers, on board early. And if you can't, then you have some other decisions to make. The feedback that we take in to do this is super important. It needs to actually surface what's going on and not just what we want to hear. I was actually having a great conversation there in the hall about KPIs, and this was so funny. They were talking about trains in Germany, okay? And if I get this wrong, jump in, okay? But the whole idea was that according to their own KPIs, they're on time all the time. But because they gave themselves a 15-minute window. So you can change the goalposts all you want to make it feel like you're hitting your goals, but that's not going to necessarily have that outcome of, delivery that we're looking for. So we need to make sure that when we say we're going to take feedback from people in the network, from the leadership, that we actually listen to it. And we don't just listen to it, we document it, and we systemize it so that we can also have the proof that we are actually hearing and listening, and others can benefit from that as well. So those are some of the key things that we did that in the darkest moments of, oh gosh, what's happening? Those 4 things really helped us pull that team together and move forward. So I could talk about people all day, but there are other parts of it, but it is so important. And I deliberately started with people first because most people do it last. Why do you think people do it last? Any thoughts? Everyone's being shy because it just got started. People are automatic. Absolutely. Like, we don't really want to have to go. Like, it's just, And also, the humans are what take most of our time when, guess what? I can design these things. I can put some other things in play, and then I'm done. But people are hard, but worth it. All right. Let's move on to system decision governance. This is system 2. And I call it decision governance just to really make it clear. This here is the engine of transformation, because you can't get things, you can put all kinds of people together, sing kumbaya and do, we're going to do great things, but guess what? If we don't have a clear system of how we're going to make decisions along the whole way, including hard ones and conflicts, we're just going to run into each other. Anyone work for a startup? Yeah. Early days, this is one thing I see in startups when they start to scale up. When you're just 3 people and you're all jamming together, you got it down. You've built that culture before you started the company. You already knew your capabilities and you could start pulling on each other. We need to do that in a big way. And we do that through decision governance. Because once you start getting multiple and the communication gets harder, that's what it's there to do. Our traditional governance models fail tremendously because they're pretty documents full of legal stuff and all sorts of intents. But the process is never there of, well, what happens if 2 fundamental leaders disagree and we have to get to a decision? In a lot of projects that fail, that goes down a spiral of, well, I don't know, and finger pointing and all kinds of, and what can happen is time. And with time comes dollars and pressure, and then we miss deadlines because this didn't get done. I'm seeing some like, oh my God, I'm living my life. But this is the reality. And especially because if we're all going in with heart, and we're all going in with best intentions, well, we all know what the road to hell was paved with, right? So traditional governance, if we flip it and we think about what are we trying to do, we're trying to guide groups of people towards outcomes. And this is where you get your delays, resistance, all that kind of stuff. So to build decision power, we got to restructure who gets to make the decision at the right level. This is another thing. There's a lot of control freaks at the top. Well, I have to oversee everything. I have to go, it has to come through me. Yeah, but you know nothing about what's happening at, the second layer of leadership in a credit union. You have no idea. So how can I make a decision when I completely don't understand it? And there's a bit of, especially in the credit union system, cooperative democracy, which makes it tougher. We all want to come to consensus or agreements or get majorities, but we got to move quick. So that's a real problem in credit unions because we can really take our time a lot and we got to go to the board, we got governance. That becomes an excuse instead of it being the guide. So I use a term, I call it decision velocity, which is that's what we want to do. We need them to go fast. In our case, we had a really, really tight timeline. I didn't have time for people to sit around going, I don't know. You gotta do it now. And that is really uncomfortable because people hate making decisions that have big outcomes. So making sure that you've got it at the right level, yeah, the lead team, the sponsor, is gonna look after the big risk, the big strategy, the big outcomes. But when it comes down to design on the product, we shouldn't have our hands in there at all, whatsoever. So these are the things that worked for us in System 2. First of all, decision rights. Who decides what and when and how. Some decisions do have to be made at a CEO or a board level. I'd say that 80% of the project decisions can be held by the PM down. And even within that, the PM probably only needs to make 20% of those as we get going. But managing all of that governance underneath is a bit of work. But if you enable and you think about, we're going to design this to get to done, that will enable progress instead of stalling it. Instead of it being, well, this is the person who needs to make it, it's about this decision has to be made by this point, and this is going to be the decider. So you have to actually pick somebody to be the decider. And if they're not ready for that, they're not the right person. Hence why we do it early. And of course, this is a big one, escalation pathways. So when we have a conflict, do we have a method to actually get it out of the project, move it up, and get it quickly decided? That's something I learned when I was in government for a while, that we needed to do when there's public pressure. You got to get it done. You have to move it out. So that's, part of the art of it is designing and anticipating. We're going to have challenges here. We're going to have decision points here. This is the right person based on their role to make that decision. And they get the authority to do it. Instead of, if you have a consensus decision making around those, you will spin and spin. And it's also important to measure that decision. How fast did you make them? Are we behind? And I think that's a KPI. How fast are we actually making decisions? Because if you're not, then there's where project overruns start to come in, and time. So this is a key question that I like everybody to think about. Does our governance mechanism enable or inhibit our transformation? All right, this is System 3. It's technology. This is the one everybody should be comfortable with, right? After everything I just said, though, this feels like, oh, okay, now I've got a lot more to consider, because I've got this crazy technical architecture and this people architecture, and now it's got to come together through the actual architectural design of the technology itself. So it's always important to notice, and I know, because I know some of you in this room, first thing we love to do, and I've even heard it while I was here, is solution. People love to solve problems. And so what we want to do is solve it right out of the gate, but without having all the other inputs, we're solving blindly. So it's important to remember, we're enabling what comes out of the decisions and the people. We're not imposing our solution on top of them. That's really huge, because many times you get a small group, we're going to drive it through. We're going to do it top down, and everyone's going to listen. And then they don't, and then everything starts to roll. But part of that is, again, if we think about the opportunity for people to put their fingerprints on it and get the buy-in, we're going to enable a much better solution, because we're going to understand the why and the how of how things will come together, how it will work. The other thing is that possibilities or limitations will be, I guess, on the table before we actually sit down to put the architecture together. In fact, if you think about the first two, the people network and the decision network, those were massive inputs into our RFP. And it really helped us do a really comprehensive view, because we weren't just looking at the pure function of what the old system was doing. We were thinking about, oh my gosh, there's all these new things. And by the way, we're in a pandemic and now we can't predict anything. So we better listen to our members right now and hear what they have to say. And it's also where you start to see where there are dependencies and also where there are competencies that are needed. So this is a question. If I were to say to you, how many people here feel that that you have the team, if tomorrow your organization came in and said, we're going to completely redo our entire stack, we're going to start it in 2 weeks, how many of you think you have the full capabilities to do that out of the gate? No one. good job. Because it's impossible to know that until you get a little further along. But often, remember, if we take the org chart and mesh it onto an architecture diagram, we're assuming that everybody has all of the skills and capabilities and the ability to actually move that forward. When we also might be missing others on the team that could have some of those skills we haven't recognized before, and they themselves might also point out things that we're missing. Hey, don't you know these two systems talk? Oh, I didn't know that, because guess what? The further up you go, the more you are not aware of all the fine detail. They also might point out this person doesn't like doing these things, but they're really great over here. So it really helps us when we have those inputs, then go, now I know who I'm going to put in which spot and who gets to make those decisions. So technical choices, of course, have big strategic implications, is the word I'm trying to say. And I think we've all seen that at some point. When you go and you get halfway through a project, it starts to turn, right? Like, I don't think I've ever completed anything that we started out with this vision, and you always end up with some things that are different because you learn along the way. But some of those technical decisions are fixed. So if you make sometimes a decision or a strategic choice, and then you find out afterward that, uh-oh, we don't have this, and it's necessary, now you're in a really big pit. You either have to cancel the project, spend maybe double or triple the money to address that piece, or maybe it's the end of your role. Like, there could be a number of things that come from having a technical strategy that went sideways. So those are just some of the things to consider. When we think about what some of the actions you can take, think about the critical tech decisions during that transformation. So think about all of what's happening, not just in your organization. In our case, the world is upside down. Geopolitics has just made everything even more challenging for us. We have membership that's changing dramatically, and their expectations are starting to go up like this. So now we have to take all of those factors into our architecture design. And we need to align. So this is the thing that I find doesn't happen very often either. How many finance teams bring in the tech people when thinking about the business plan? Not very many, usually. Usually the groups work in their, and they go, we'll bring it all together at a certain point. But the reality is, if the business strategy is not aligned to the technical architecture, you're going to end up with an adoption problem. You're going to end up people going, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to make it. Why did you do this? Why did you make it this way? And then just stop using it or going and reverting back to older ways of doing things. So the business strategy, though, if it is, we want to not just modernize. Everybody wants to modernize. We want to make it very simple for our teams and our members to interact with us. That's the goal. And then everything we do around architecture should serve that goal and not 45 different priorities. So it's really important to have that crystal clear business objective that when you have to make some decisions about this isn't going to work, this isn't going to change, you're staying true to the business strategy. And managing that transition between all of those systems is critical. So we're not once and done with the people side because they're just continuing to move. Decisions are going to continue to apply. So you can see these three are not done as silos that just tie together. They're interdependent, and they need to be worked together and planned and continually adjusted. So what worked for us is, first of all, we built for adaptability. That was our big goal, was we need to be very adaptable because we have a lot of merging, a lot of unpredictability, a lot of needs. And that was our North Star. We also managed our technical debt as a strategic choice. So we knew we have a lot of deficits here and things. How can we partner for that? How can we turn our challenge into another opportunity? And that you're not going to get just from the technical architecture. You're going to get that by reaching out and learning as well, again, from those other systems. But you got to make sure that what you do design is going to hit the mark, that it isn't just going to be, yeah, we didn't quite get there. So this is where, of course, the strength of our technology teams, the strength of quality assurance, the strength of test and retest, especially when you're migrating payment systems and really complex things, that is crucial. That role is there, but it should happen in conjunction with everybody else. So that's a balance of innovation and stability within those critical systems. So I'd say you want to ask yourself, does our architecture enable or is it constraining our options? Is it going to get us there or not? And this is really, I think, the big question about, are we misaligned? So here's some indications of where you may have misalignment between the three systems. So if people networks are falling off, we usually see resistance. I hate the word resistance, by the way, because I think that that's just a sign we haven't done a good job of helping bring that person along. A lack of adoption. So I had this in the pandemic when our credit unions were adopting account lending and account opening and lending. All of them got through account opening, no problem. But only 6 out of 50 took on digital lending right away. Well, what we learned, they didn't actually have people that knew how to do digital marketing. They needed to upskill their competencies to meet the technical requirement. And that's a place you don't want to be. So again, if we'd done our people network at that time, we would have picked that up probably and said, we only need to enable 6. And communication breakdowns. So when you start seeing people become a different person, and then they get labeled a problem, that problem is probably your biggest awareness to a whole host of other things. On the decision side, delays, unclear leadership or ownership, decisions that are flip-flopping, that's a sign we're not getting things done. So there's a place where we got to spend some more time on the governance. And of course, with tech, I know everybody knows this, but when we start seeing rigidity and people digging their heels in, that's usually a sign we're misaligned. Or it's too complex, or if we can't scale it. So those are just a few things that you can watch. And this is how you accomplish the mission. And I know it's a bit of a repeat, but it really is. Strong, trusted people network. So everything you're doing here today, that plays into it. Building your networks, knowing people, because guess what? With AI now, that is becoming even more challenging. Do I actually trust you? Because are you actually who you say you are? Being clear and making sure that governance is enabling, strategic, flexible technology, and that continuous alignment of all three together. That's how we do it. So I have about 2 minutes left, and I just wanted to open it up. Has anybody here had an experience or anything similar that they would like to share? Lots of nods. Confidential, yeah. Okay. Let me ask you this. And I'll do it this way. How many people feel that they had a misaligned people network in previous projects? Wow, you're all starting. Oh, I see a few hands. Yeah, got a few of those. How many here feel they had a misaligned governance model? Great. And the tech architecture, did it turn out exactly the way you want it? No. All right, so thank you for that little poll. I think the key here is this. No matter where you start, to be honest, all three need to come together harmoniously. And if you can do that, then you're going to set yourself, your team, all up for the best outcome, and it won't be mission impossible anymore. So I just want to take a moment to thank you all. It's been my pleasure to be here to be the first opening presentation, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the conference. Thank you.